Welcome back to another episode of Off the Top. Thank you so much for joining us. I got my man Kyle Trimble from the Tie.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Appreciate you, sir. Thanks
Always
for coming
a pleasure.
through. All right, so I want to tell everyone how we first met, right? I think it's an interesting story and a great place to start. So I went down to iConnections in Miami, and that was my first crypto conference that I had ever attended. One of my clients told me, hey, you should go there and try to find your way into some of these side parties because that's where all of the action happens. So I saw one of my clients commented on this guy's post on LinkedIn who I'd never spoken to before. The post was, hey, I'll be at iConnections, I'll see you at my party if anyone's coming through. And I saw one of my clients comment hey, we'll be there, look forward to seeing you. So I was just like, dude, what do I have to lose? I dropped my little comment down there. Up top will be in Miami, would love to come by. And what do you know? He slid in my DMs and sent me an invite. And, of course, I showed up with 2 Cuban cigars as soon as I rolled up. I was like, brother, thank you so much for the invite. He says, man, welcome to crypto. Who do you want to meet? And that was, at that moment when I walked in and was, kind of welcomed, with such open arms. That's when I first realized, this is the spirit within crypto. There's no gatekeeper. There's no one saying, get out of here. You can't do this. It's oh, great, you're here. Happy to see you. What can we do for you?
100%, man. And that's first of all, pulling up with the cigars is very on brand of you. So I got to give you credit.
Everything on brand, brother.
Genuine in that respect. But yeah, man. No, I mean it's really first of all, I think I should say that we definitely I was manning the door that night, which I did not have the pleasure of doing that, but ended up in that situation regardless. Some woman pulled up and named dropped Gary V and told me that she was coming to this party that we were throwing. The Tie was throwing this along with Floating Point, Amber Data, and I think another company, maybe it was Ledger Prime. And she comes up, she's like, yeah, I'm doing NFT stuff with Gary V. I'm like, this is largely an institutional event. We're here networking with industry participants, and I did kick her out, but luckily when I got the chance to meet you, you fit right in.
Yeah, because bro, you don't need to be doing all that. You know what I mean? That's not the vibe at all.
Not at all.
But I will say, when I first met you, so I didn't know that you were one of the hosts of the party. I didn't know that this was your thing. But I clearly remember, and this is what I'll say about my first interaction with you. I clearly remember, I was walking around the room just kind of looking okay, who do I connect with? At this point, I still had my sales glasses on when you're okay, who do I need to meet here? What do I need to do for business, right? Now that I've been to a few of these, I dropped that completely, and I know you just go there, have a good time, and you're going to meet
people,
right?
Who you talk to. That's it.
But at that point, I didn't know that yet.
Right,
and I saw you, I'm walking around, and you just have this, very welcoming presence. You have this, a big smile on your face, your chest is pumped out. You're holding court kind of thing, and anyone who knows Kyle, that's how he is, right?
Having fun, man.
Yeah, and you bring this very inviting energy, anyone could talk to me, it's all good, So you're very easily to build a relationship with, and I think that's kind of that's very on brand for you, and I think that's 100%. Probably helped you a lot. So let's start there. I mean, when you're out connecting with people at these events and in these chat rooms or whatever. What's the energy that you put out there that's been so effective in bringing people to you?
100%. Yeah. So, I mean, I work in sales. So I was, joined the Tie about a year ago as the first kind of salesperson. And, for me, I feel a big part of being in crypto over the past year has been about trying to figure out what's actually going on. Who are these different player types on the industry side? Not so much on the token side, but thinking about the entire ecosystem, the entire industry that actually exists within crypto, right? You have all these trading institutions, you have service providers, you have recruiters, you have all these different players, right? So for me, it's I feel more so than just going out and selling, I want a fact-finding mission. I want to figure out, what are you doing in the space? How are you doing it? What are the pain points that you're experiencing? And how can we partner together? It just so happens that the product that I sell happens to fulfill a lot of, or solve for a lot of those issues, right? And I'm able to fit that in ways that it makes sense. But, even with someone like you who's a recruiter, I'm curious, man, how do you find your way into this space? What kind of people are you talking to? What kind of institutions are you placing these candidates with? And that's why, I really, when it comes to having a conversation in crypto, for me, I really very rarely turn that opportunity down because you never really know who you're going to meet, and look where we're at.
I think that's so funny. Like, that's so true. Like, the being curious and being humble, and it really speaks to the example that you just gave of kicking out the woman who name dropped Gary Vee. It's like, that's not the energy. Like, I would rather hear you say, I'm curious to meet some people at the tie. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? That's a much more. And now, like, you know, with our old hats on, might think like that sounds corny. That sounds like, you know, because people are so used to trying to be a one up someone or be the big guy. Like,
Right.
it's the opposite. That's flipped on its ass.
I think with crypto comes like this ethos of maybe like humility a little bit, or like not humility, or not humility, but like humble, like being humble, right? Because we all understand, we all recognize, like we operate in a system, in this little, tiny little corner of the world called crypto, where no one really knows what's going on. We're building it as it's happening, right? Like, we see new iterations of whether it's, again, on the crypto side or on the industry side, like new iterations of companies, protocols, whatever it may be, and things continue to develop, but there is no standardized way of doing things. Like, we're still figuring it out. So you can't really act like something is a sure thing, or like, have that, like that confidence. Like, there always has, you have to come into these situations.
That's a clue saying you don't know what you're talking about. You're overly confident.
Right.
You
If
don't
you're overly
what's going
confident,
on here.
like if you're not curious, if you're not asking questions, then I can tell that you don't know what you're talking about, because the smartest people that I know ask those questions.
You know what's funny is I saw David Mickley, the guy who invited me to my first party. I saw him in Barcelona at your event again, and I went up to him, and I was with Marty, who came with me to the first one, and I went right up to him and I was like, dude, like, I gave him a quick update on like all the great stuff that's been happening with me and up top since you met me in the beginning, right? And in one sense, I guess I was bragging a little bit, like it may have seemed like that, but then like how I finished that conversation is like, I'm so happy about this. Like, thank you for opening this door for me. So it's not bragging. It's being grateful. It's a sense of gratitude, and it's showing you, you opened this door for me, and look what's come out of it. At that first party, I'll drop a couple names. I met you. I met Laura from Ledger Prime, who's now a client. I met Nathan, who's the founder of Ondo, now a really good client. And a whole bunch of other people that opened other doors that are maybe not like doing direct business, whatever. But the point is, like, for me to go to him like 6 months later and say, here's what I've accomplished, and I'm so grateful, like, that's the energy of crypto. That's something that anyone who's in the space will connect to, will identify with.
100%. I mean, any success that we see here in the space just continues to further validate everything that we're doing, right? Because I mean, it's been years and years and years of people like laughing at this, as whenever you reference crypto as an asset class, people laugh at that, and like there's oh, it's too risky, or oh no, but there's no use case, or like whatever it may be. I feel like that has always been kind of the narrative. So for me, it's like, even when I talk to like a traditional firm that's looking to move into the space and like trying to explore a little bit, like, I always say that anything that you do, like especially involving me, like further validates like what I'm doing every single day. Because if you're curious, if you're asking questions, if you're trying to figure it out, then that means we're all doing something right, because you wouldn't waste your own time, especially if you're a bulge bracket bank, right? So that for us, I think, has been really, really exciting. And again, like I think like the way, like looking at it that way and understanding that, like, that's really the way that we're all kind of people say wag me or whatever you want to say, but at the end of the day, like, it's really like further just trying to further a space overall, an industry that we think has potential to become something really great, and that's what we keep pushing for.
100%. So I guess, like, do you have any, like, I know you probably don't have any like direct tactics on how to build the relationships in crypto, but is there anything that you've done that you've noticed, hey, like this work, like I just said, like one example for me is like being humble and using my success as a way and relating it back to how you've helped me. That's a tool that I use to connect to people, and it's been working, and people respect that. Like, is there anything that you do that just helps, or anything that you say that is like a relatable and it's a consistent thing that works in your relationship building in the space, or no?
I mean, the first thing I would say is, I mean, you have to be genuine. You have to be yourself, because I feel like if you're not, then people can see through that pretty quickly. I find that crypto is not a transactional industry. Like, it's very much relationship focused, which obviously you're like alluding to here. And I think for me specifically, like, I've spent a lot of time just trying to get to know these different people and understand their businesses and what drives them. Like, there is this filter that exists for people that want to break into the crypto space.
Right.
And it's based on almost what you could refer to as libertarian values, but it's really about doing your own research, figuring some of this stuff out for yourself before, saying how can I do this? How can I break in? How can I figure this out? It's like, okay, well, like what have you done so far to like put yourself in a position where that could be possible for you? And I think that, tying that all together, like, it's really a matter of you have to prove kind of your interest or your drive to really get into this space first
100%.
before somebody will actually sit down and have that kind of conversation with you. Where like, oh hey, like I have a friend at this firm who may be looking. Like, you have to kind of prove that you understand that like it does take like a little bit of curiosity. That I know people that I got great grades in school and that were able to follow the book and do all these great things, but like for me, I was always kind of outside of that. I was always trying to learn, kind of learn on the fly and learn about things that I was interested in, and that for me was really big as far as like is going down these different rabbit holes, like taking these risks, like talking to these different people and trying to figure out what is it that would work for me and what does that look like, right?
Totally.
And I feel like unless you've really gone through that journey, like until you've kind of done that for yourself, like it's going to be hard, to really get established until you can really like speak to that. And then how you kind of got there.
And it kind of relates to what we were saying, like right out there before. It's like, when someone comes up to me and asks me, hey, like, I've been in TradFi for 5 years, like in this role, how much can I make if I go into crypto? Like, you're asking the wrong questions, bro.
Question.
You're doing it wrong. You know what I mean?
100%.
And it speaks to the same thing. So
it's a startup. It's startup culture, right? So it's also like, nobody wants to talk to you about how much you can get paid. They want to know what value you bring to the table, and we're going to compensate you accordingly. Like that's like, come on, that's just 101 right there.
So why don't we go back and why don't you tell me like how you made the transition? Like, what was your point of entry? What was your point of curiosity? Where did you start?
Yeah, absolutely. It was back in college for me. So I back in school. This is probably 2017.
Where'd you go to school?
A school called Elon University down in North Carolina. So I was there. I was studying finance. And for me, I was always like looking for new things that I was interested in, and eventually it landed on on Bitcoin, and I started like exploring this thing. I read the white paper, I dove down into it, and next thing I knew was my senior year of college, and a buddy of mine, he and I started like building these rigs to mine Bitcoin. So in an office space, like 10, 15 minutes off campus, we built a bunch of computers and just got them all kind of working and mining Bitcoin. And at the time it was Zcash. And just really just trying to, figure out how all of this worked, right? So that was my first kind of introduction to proof of work, algorithms and how everything kind of worked. So, but that for me was like, initially I was like, this is so interesting, but like, where is there an opportunity for me to work? And there really wasn't one. Like, and as I kind of further explored, like, it was so much risk in actually trying to work for a crypto company at that point in time. This is 2018, 2019. I was like, there's no way that's for me. So I left, I graduated school, moved to New York and worked for a company called FactSet, Bloomberg competitor, and was there for a number of years. But throughout that period of time, I tried for a lot of things. I went for investment banking. I went for my CFA. I interviewed with other data companies. I was always interested in crypto, but still thought that it was too risky. And then finally, 2020 comes around, everyone goes home, offices shut down, like everyone's working from home, whatever. And I'm like, it's finally time for me to pick a lane and like really dive into something, because I really just wasn't fulfilled in my current, in my role at that time. So I was looking for something more entrepreneurial and something that would, be more of a mission for me. So it was, March of 2020, and I think I sent.
And you were selling FactSet's product to institutions already.
Yeah, so I was in consulting and sales, so working primarily with some, some very large financial institutions, really to help them use our product, right? So that was a big part of that. But yeah, and then March of 2020 came around, and I sent my first kind of blind outreach LinkedIn message to a person who worked at Tacit at the time. Which is I believe it was a company that offered Bitcoin swaps at the time, and he's since become a very good contact of mine. But that just led to so many different conversations that I started having from all this outreach that I was doing, and eventually started working for companies for free, really to try and get experience on my resume. Because as I looked at my resume, I was like, who's going to hire somebody?
What kind of stuff were you doing in these free projects?
Yeah, so the first company I worked for was called Bitcoin Point. It was a London-based Bitcoin ATM company.
Wow.
They called me their data officer, and I did a lot of work with them, really just looking at. So we were basically trying to do a lot of KYC to figure out who are the people that are basically using these ATMs and doing a lot of KYC on them. So I would handle a lot of that process. That was kind of my first step, and then my second step was I worked with another company called Eterna Capital, is a venture capital firm based out of London, they ran an accelerator program for builders on Algorand, so the Algorand blockchain.
Sure.
So I did all the BD for that, did a lot of outreach, recruited a number of projects to come and build on Algorand, and then ran that whole process.
Now, you met these guys through the first person that you messaged on LinkedIn, and he just kind of fanned you out?
That was just the first message that I sent, but then just through that effort, connected with a bunch of different people who, eventually found people that were looking for just people to help out and work. And like that for me was like a fantastic opportunity for me to do that on top of a full-time job. So I was like, you know what, I have my job that I do every day. I'll do that. And then, on the side, we'll start to gain some more experience in this space, because I really see myself, having an opportunity to expand it and do all of that. So, I did that for the better part of, 6 to 9 months, probably just going into 2021. And then January of 2021 is when I really started interviewing hard. I think I interviewed with over 30 companies.
Wow.
I had this focus on market making. I think that market makers are just like the coolest companies.
I was going to ask you how you filtered out your search in the beginning of like where you were looking. I think that's important.
Yeah, no, I learned how market making worked. It was kind of like one moment for me where I was like, wait, what are these companies doing? How does this work? All these questions is kind of were answered for me, because a big issue that exists in crypto is this issue of liquidity, right? And liquidity being like the willingness of somebody to purchase or sell an asset, right? So willingness of a buyer to buy below a certain price and the willingness of a seller to sell above a certain price. But there's this issue in crypto where like, hey, if you trade stocks, you are never worried that if you're buying or selling like a share of call it Ford or something, right? Like you're never really worried that there's going to be slippage, right? Where you're going to have to pay 3% more or take 3% less for selling or buying or selling an asset, whatever it may be. But in crypto, there's this issue of liquidity where it's very difficult, given that there's all these different chains, all these different exchanges, there's just less capital in general that's available, where it's very hard to trade these assets. Like if you wanted to invent a new token and list it on an exchange, the first thing you need is somebody who's willing to take the other side of a trade if some retail participant comes in and says, hey, I want up top coin, it's gonna take one day. It's gonna happen. So you need somebody else to take the other side of that trade. And I learned how that worked, and then I learned how market makers would also partner specifically with tokens, and how those relationships would develop. And I think that to me was a really interesting point. So I dove into that and got really, really deep and talked to a number of different market makers. But at the end of the day, the opportunity for me really came about when I met my current CEO, Josh Frank.
But hang on, I think that's a really important point to highlight, is that so you had general curiosity while you were in college, and it led you to do the mining rig, right? Mm-hmm. And then it didn't stop there. You took it a step further. You found a specific niche that interests you, and you actually zoned in and paid attention
100%.
to that niche. I think that's the piece that gets so overlooked. And that, people out there, they don't understand, that's the important part.
100%.
Now, big question. You just mentioned Josh. How long did it take you from when you took your first project, from that first LinkedIn message, to meeting Josh? Because I think, and tell me how long you thought it would take before you
How long do you think it took?
Good question. My guess is no more than 3 months.
Better part of a year and a half.
Really?
Better part of a year.
A year and a half doing those side projects?
Yeah.
Wow.
I worked my ass off. I worked harder then than I work now to try to break in.
Wow.
I didn't have a life. But also, to be fair, it was during COVID and there was nothing going on. So I was very much just I was very much just locked into how do I make this happen?
Wow. So it took you a year and a half to meet. It took you a year and a half doing these side projects. All right, yeah. Walk me through that.
Yeah, it really it was for me. Initially it was the outreach, then it was the working for the companies, for basically for free, trying to get experience where I'd be able to get my foot in the door, and then from there it was then outreach and actually trying to work for these companies, right? So initially I was very dead set on trying to work for a market maker or an exchange. But really, the opportunity that presented itself, which I think this ended up being a very good thing for me, was a product very similar to the company, to the product that the company I had worked for previously offered, but this was in the crypto space, and that's how I ended up at the TIE. But funny enough, like it was 2018 when I first started working at FactSet. I actually pitched like crypto data like integration like into FactSet, and it actually got pretty high up the chain. Like I talked to some pretty senior people at FactSet in my first 6 months at the firm. Like again, this is a 10,000 person company.
Right.
Like
That's awesome.
Not very easy as a new hire at a company to shake things up and whatever. But I pitched that back in the day, and that nothing really ever came of it. But then I met Josh Frank, who said, we were it was a Monday night, and I was at there was a girl who lives in my building down in FiDi in New York, and I just was over at her apartment. She had a couple friends over, and this guy's sitting on the couch, and naturally, if you talk to me, like crypto will come out. We're in some way or another, if there's any logical path to get there.
I hate that I'm
you'll
that
find
guy
it.
too.
Like
there.
it comes out, man. Like if like it happens. But we just started talking, and he was like, yeah, like I actually founded like a crypto data company, and I'm like, oh, is it like, I was like, Masari? He's like, no. I'm like, is it Dune Analytics? He's like, no. I was like, we're bigger than all of them. Who are you? He's like, we're the TIE. I was like, I've never heard of you. But then, yeah, we started talking. I got his info, and that was on a Monday. I'm pretty sure I went on a walk with him in Union Square that Thursday, which served as like my interview with him. He passed me along to the other co-founder, Ben, who I think I interviewed with Friday. And I'm pretty sure by like that Saturday, I had like an offer letter like in my inbox with everything that I had asked for to become the first salesperson at the TIE.
Incredible.
And I've been there for about a year. And yeah.
Incredible. So, all right, cool. So in the early days of the TIE, so you had experience already from FactSet. You were dealing with the same type of clients that you would now be engaging with at the TIE. Is that correct?
More or less.
Okay. So you at least knew that personality type and how to engage with them, but you hadn't established yourself at all in crypto. So,
right.
Like, at this point, you're coming... No, so in your side projects, did you... had you built a strong network already, or you had just kind of gotten your foot...
That's funny, yeah. So I had. So it's funny because when Josh and I first kind of went on our initial interview where he was like trying to figure out who I was and how I fit into the equation, like one of the things that I remember being a really like key point for us was just like we knew so many of the same people, and that for him was like, you don't work in crypto, like how do you like know all these people? And it was like, because I networked my ass off for like a long time to like try and meet all these people and understand.
And so most of these people that you had in common, are these people that you were reaching out to for jobs at first?
People that I was reaching out to for jobs, but it wasn't like when I reach out to people, especially like initially, it wasn't like I was just reaching out for a job.
Right.
I was reaching out to figure out what you did.
Facts.
What do you do? And how can I use my skill set? Like number one, what do you do? Because you might do something that has absolutely no upward trajectory at all. Mm-hmm. And I, as somebody who wants to work at a startup, should be able to evaluate a company to be able to say if like, hey, this is something that could potentially work, or like, hey, I actually think this is like complete bullshit. I don't care. And that for me was like, let's start by having that conversation. Like, I'm not going to come to you for a job. I'm going to come to you to figure out what you do. And like, let's talk about it. And like, let's talk about ways that maybe we can partner together. And that's still the same thing that I do today, like with all my relationships.
It's one thing to ask for a job, and then it's a completely separate thing to ask, I want to understand what you do and how I can help.
Right.
That's almost the same thing, just in a much better way to ask.
But it's also, I mean, as somebody who's looking to hire people, like you would rather prioritize someone who is looking to deliver value and in basically in return for, obviously a paycheck, as opposed to somebody who's just like looking to get paid to do work. Like that's a 9 to 5. Like crypto, if you want to work a 9 to 5, crypto's not for you. If you want a mission where you wake up every day and you want to deliver and you want ownership in your company, you want equity in your company, or you want tokens from the project that you're working with that will appreciate in value, should you deliver on, should you deliver well on what you are trying to do, then like, yeah, that's startups. That's also a big part of crypto. Like, and that's not for people that just want to, punch a clock and get a job done.
No, you're so right. Like there's no 9 to 5 there's no 9 to 5s in crypto at all.
It'll happen. The industry will expand. I mean, you have companies like Coinbase now who have thousands of employees, right? So at a certain point, like I envision should this industry continue to expand, there will be companies with thousands and thousands of employees where sure that will be the case, but right now we're building. we're still relatively unproven, especially given the events of the past week. People are looking at us right now like, are you still, like, I mean, how many texts have I gotten? Are you still have a job? Like, are you still employed? Like, it's tough with everything going on with the market sometimes. But at the same time, like, we're in build mode.
We felt the highs as just as much as we felt the lows, and yeah, I mean that's how you kind of separate the people who are supposed to be here from the people who aren't built for it, right?
100%.
In some regard.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that all kind of comes together the way that it's supposed to.
So at some point, you took yourself from having like an entry level network to being the guy that we see at all the crypto events. So like there must have been like a jumping off point to where you made that transition. And I'm sure I can like probably relate this back to some stuff that I've done too. Because there's definitely like times where you're like, oh wait, this was a good move. So like what was your first kind of like, I guess, event or something that happened that took you into where you are right now? There's got to be something.
I mean, as far as a specific event or a specific time, I mean, I feel like it's been for me, I think it's been consistency, right? So like I've kind of made it my mission to be everywhere. If like New York is a great place to be for crypto. There's events all the time. There's all these different Telegram chats that are going. Get involved was kind of like my initial thing. Was it's like be everywhere. Like I had the opportunity of being the first salesperson at a company that was looking to deliver a product that would be the Bloomberg of crypto, right? And that for me was the most exciting opportunity because I get to be the face of that. So I get to go out. I get to use this insane product that I thought was sick and that I saw the value that it delivered. And starting with that, I was like, I got excited about it. So now I'm like, okay, I want to go and spread the good word, right? I want to go out there. I want to shill. So I would shill the TIE the same way that I would shill any other token, Maple Finance, that I absolutely love.
Shout out to Maple.
We love Maple Finance.
Me too.
We absolutely love Maple. But I would shill it the same way that I would talk about any token. And it's like, listen, like if this is something that like, but it's never just like, hey, let me just like, shove this down your throat. It's like, let's talk. What do you do? How do you operate? And if that just so happens to overlap with the value that our product delivers, then like let's talk. Yeah. If not, who do you want to meet? Who do you want to talk to? Like what kind of relationships?
How can I help?
Right. Yeah. And that's
I think obviously that's such a powerful question that I always make sure when I'm recruiting people 100%. And if there's nothing I can do for them on the recruiting front, 100%. I always ask like, is there anything I can do with my network to help you?
100%.
And that's powerful.
It absolutely is. And that's a big part of what I think I've tried to do in the space is like, again, it comes back to like the very values of like how I tried to break into the space by asking questions, like trying to figure out what people do, how do they fit into this big equation, which is institutional crypto or whatever it looks like. Mm-hmm. And then from there, like if it's not something that I can do directly, then let me try and fit you in with somebody that I think can help. And that, has helped me just, I think, develop so many relationships that are based on this, like this trust and like this, mm-hmm. This just like this willingness of like, not like, I'm not a sales guy. I say this all the time. I don't sell, I shill. I shill and I try to help wherever I can. I try to,
define shill for people out there that don't. So I've seen it in context of the crypto conversation, but I maybe don't know the actual definition.
Shilling is kind of on par with like, spreading the gospel, right? So it's like if you work at a company and you're a sales guy, like you have a product that you think is helpful and you try to find someone that you can fit in with whatever. Like for me, it's like, and I feel like with a lot of like what takes place in crypto is like, we believe in what we're doing so much that it becomes almost like a religion,
right?
To the point where like when you're shilling something, like
it's respectable because we know that you believe that.
Right. It's to me it's very much like, I'm very much drinking the same Kool-Aid that I'm serving up to you.
Right.
And if it's not something that that makes sense for you and it's not something that works, then again, take a step back and let's talk about something different, because I'm sure that there are ways that we can help each other out, because again, small industry, mm-hmm. right? Everyone's out here trying to make themselves more relevant, trying to make the overall space more respectable and further it more. So I think for us, like, at least for me, like, I would so much rather be in the camp of like, let me talk to you about something that I genuinely believe in, and something that I genuinely think works and helps people out, versus like, let me just like, sell you something that like, hey, maybe you'll like it, and like maybe not, I don't care. Like, it's for me, it's a mission, right? And that's what I think has been a big part of like, of my relationship building in this space,
Because
especially
it resonates with people, because you can feel that on the other side.
Because they're just as passionate about whatever their venture
Right.
is as I am about mine, and if it just so happens that we can work together and help each other out, fantastic, and that's a match made in heaven,
Yep.
and we'll ride that as long as we can. But it's really like, I mean, I'm not just trying to sling products.
Right.
Like, that's not my mission over here, and like that's not the values of the tie. Like, I mean, we've grown. I mean, I was the first salesperson at the tie. We have like 6 or 7 salespeople now.
Incredible.
And we try to instill that in everyone as we continue moving forward. Is like, this is like, it prioritize the relationship, and we want to make sure that we're working with our clients and understanding what they're doing, so that we can, if our product can't do what they need it to do now, then let's continue to iterate and continue getting closer and closer to that. And that's a big part of just, I guess, call it sales in crypto, right?
And I think like also something that resonates when you speak is like what I've noticed is through all the clients that I talk to is like one thing that I have in common with every single client that I speak to is that we're all just doing what we did in Web 2 or TradFi differently, updated, better, using Web 3 crypto logic and technologies, right? So when you talk about working for FactSet and then doing a similar type of role in crypto, and how excited you are to run your own plays rather than go, try to beg 15 levels up the food chain to get approval for something that makes sense. I can understand why you're bursting with passion, because you don't got to go through that anymore. You're right here, and everything you want is like you can just get it done.
Right.
Yeah. And if you fail, like, that's cool. Like, you're still welcomed here, and we can try something new and start over again, you know?
No, absolutely. I've been given the opportunity to speak with companies that I would never have dreamed would even, number one, even be touching crypto.
Facts.
Number two, that like I wouldn't have gotten in front of at a traditional firm for 10 years.
Same.
And I manage those relationships, and those people are people that respect me, and I have respect for them. And like, also the great thing about being crypto native, especially as it refers to, or as it links to traditional finance firms, is like I'm the expert in the room, like, which is crazy, like, and I know myself, I'm not that smart. But when you're talking to somebody who's been doing, who's been an MD at a bulge bracket bank for 20 years, like whatever it is, like
they're coming to you to tell them
they don't understand this at all, right? And like that, like, and it's funny. I think Jason Yanowitz, right, from Blockworks, right, like great, fantastic
Shout out
guy.
to Blockworks.
We love Blockworks.
We'll see you next week.
Yeah, permissionless. We'll see you there. But he had a great LinkedIn post, tweet, whatever it was, probably 6 to 8 months ago. But it just resonated with me. It was like, it used to be like in these older industries, like, you would go to a conference as a young person, and you'd want to find the older guy in the room who's been doing this for a number of years, and like, try and like get some of that wisdom out of him, but like the script has been
so funny
flipped completely in crypto, where it's like, these guys from the banks and from, the traditional firms, like, they're coming to these conferences and to these meetups to try and connect with people like us that are like, like we're in the middle of it. Like, they have no insight into what's going on here, like, until they talk to somebody like us or hire somebody who like understands this kind of stuff, right?
I'll tell you something crazy that happened to me recently. That is just like one of those moments, and I'm sure you've had plenty of these, as I know I have. That are just like your mind is blown for a second. You're like, how did this happen, right? So I won't name drop the company, but huge prop shop. A big one that I've been, before I was in crypto recruiting, I was recruiting quants for prop trading. And it's one of the companies that I was constantly knocking on their door, begging to have them as a client. And they
guesses.
So they rejected me a lot of times and never wanted to mess with me. Months later that I'm doing crypto, I got on the radar somehow, and they reached out to me to become a vendor, which I'm like offended. I'm not a vendor, I'm a partner. So I work with them on the talent side, right? And that was going really well. Built some good relationships, and the top guy who started their whole crypto operation, they've been around in cryptos for a while now. He came to me and he said, Dan, he's like, we have a branding problem. Everyone thinks of us as a TradFi company, and we need to be known in the DeFi markets. How do we do that? Like, before I even I had the perfect answer to this question, by the way, which was...
Can I guess your answer?
Yeah.
Twitter.
No, even better. I think you'll like this one even better. Come to the next conference and partner with me on an event, and we can do a up top and prop shop
Yes.
party, and I'll invite all the DeFi talent.
There you go.
You know what I mean, right?
That works too.
So the fact that I was able to pitch this to this company who I was begging to let me in the door last year is crazy, right? And I'm sure you've had moments where you're just like, I can't even believe that not only am I in this conversation, but like I'm able to like speak from this angle. It's nuts.
100%. No, yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of people since I've been in this space now, like that is especially from like people from like my old company and different things, like from other jobs that I've worked at, who have reached out to try to figure out like, oh hey, like this is kind of interesting. Like, what do you know about this? Or like, I'm trying to break in. How can you help me do this? Like different things like that. And it really like, you know, for me, I think it's really just been a shift from me finding something, like being able to spend as much of my time as I can on something that I'm actually passionate about.
Totally.
Where I'm able to really sink my teeth into it and just make it almost like, you know, a persona, like really just make it a big part of who I am. And that I think has translated into me just being able to, you know, to be like a kind of a resource for a lot of people. But you know,
it's a good feeling, right? To know that you can give, like, you can be that resource.
It's a good feeling, you know, but also at the same time, like I have to put myself in my place, you know, because I've only been in this space for a year. It moves incredibly quickly, you know, like the tie is 4 years old. I've been with the tie for a year, you know, but that being said, we didn't have a product really the front end product that we sell right now didn't exist until a year ago, which is when they were able to bring me on. But, you know, I sometimes really do have to like, you know, take a step back and, you know, as far as I think I've been able to progress in this space, especially from like just the industry standpoint, like, you know, it definitely like is, you know, I definitely look around sometimes. I'm like, what I was doing a year ago is so much different from what I'm doing
but
right
see,
now.
that's what makes, in my opinion, that's what's going to make you very successful. And that's honestly, I have the same exact mindset, which is I know my value. I know what I bring to the table, but I also know I have a sense of humility. I know where I stand, and I know like what I have to learn. So it becomes this balance of, you know, when you meet these, and you know, when I talk about that prop shop, I don't mean to say that there's no one at that prop shop that is like I would love to do business with, and I show tons of respect, and even that guy, like, I mean, he's a legend. You know what I'm saying? So for sure. But so it's knowing that we can learn from each other. That's what's and that's what builds like a powerful relationship. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
totally.
Yeah. No, and I think the crazy thing about crypto and that you learn very quickly from being in this space is like we exist on like this exponential curve of like information and wealth.
Yeah.
Like people in crypto, like you see people that have hit it so big. Like I mean, I'm sure you've done the same thing. Like we've been to tables with billionaires, you know, and these are guys that have just like absolutely crushed it in this space. And like, you know, sometimes you have to take a step back and just be like, you know, wow, like, you know, like I really like, you know, I'm trying to figure out how I fit into this whole equation, and it can definitely throw you for a loop sometimes where it's just like, man, like, you know,
you get the imposter syndrome for a minute.
I have had like I think that's been bigger for me as I've gotten more experience, because I think my confidence has continued to increase, and I think sometimes I try to rein myself in a little bit to be like, hey man, like
take it easy.
Take it easy.
Ego
like,
check.
You know,
I mean,
like
every sales guy has to have an ego, but then you need to.
Of course. And yeah, I think, you know, at the end of the day, for me, it's all about just like continuing to contribute to what I think is going to be, you know, the future of everything. And yeah.
I mean, so you touched on a few things that we're going to circle back to. A few things you touched on, Twitter hacking, Twitter marketing. Definitely want to ask you about that. Throwing these events and being that guy who's organizing. I want to get behind the scenes on that. I want to hear what that looks like. But something I don't want to skip over is I think we've danced around this a lot, but a personal mentor to me, someone I respect so much, Chris Jones at UBS. Shout out to you. When I worked over there, you know, he kind of took me under his wing and taught me a lot of good lessons. Most of them I couldn't make sense of while he was teaching me, right? And one thing he taught me was about personal brand. What is my personal brand? And he would say that when I went to UBS, kind of because I stuck out so much from what everyone else in that organization in TradFi was doing. And, you know, just like I've always been me, I'm sure you've always been you. You know what I mean? A little bit. And maybe I was just very unfiltered in this. And a lot of times, you know, some of the stuff that some of the attitude and some of the qualities that make me successful in crypto actually held me back in TradFi. Like being too aggressive and being too passionate. Sometimes if you're too passionate and you want to create new strategies and get things done and you're so hungry about it, what you're actually doing is making it hard for someone else above up the food chain, right? And that's when you start seeing these like really inefficient companies that, you know, just make it hard to do business. And ultimately that kind of thing was really, really frustrating to me in my old career, and I did not deal with it well. And my personal brand unintentionally kind of became like the guy who fights the system. You know what I mean? And it wasn't a good look.
Right.
You can see how that. But in crypto, that kind of energy is almost welcomed and channeled in a way that's productive. You know?
No, I completely agree. That's really, I think that's one of the beautiful things that really attracted me to. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, what really brought me into crypto when I really like what brought me into crypto initially was curiosity. And I think that's what brings anybody into crypto initially, is that you have to be curious and you have to ask questions and you have to dive a level deeper. Like, you know, like crypto is all built on values of capitalism and libertarianism, right? It's like, do your own research, and if your system doesn't work, somebody will make money exploiting it. That will be the case. Like, then that's what we see happening all the time. So, you know, if you're in crypto and you stand there with this sense of like, hey, I know everything and I know what's going on, like, somebody will expose you. That will happen. Like everything that happens in crypto takes place on chain. It's all public. Everyone can see it. All you have to do is drill down into it and you can see exactly what's taking place. But for me, you know, I think as far as personal brand goes, you know, a big thing that I really tried to do initially, again, was just be everywhere. Right? Like, I wanted to make sure that I gave myself every opportunity to connect and to learn from all of these people that I respected so much and that I thought were, you know, on top of the world, like, you know, running these companies that I had only dreamed about ever actually speaking to when I was on crypto Twitter in 2019, 2020, whatever it may be. And when I finally had the opportunity to do that, it was like I realized that, you know, with the skill set that I had built up over time working with these companies and doing all this outreach and making these connections, that like, oh wait, hey, I actually might be able to like introduce you to someone who may be able to help you with that. And I think the first time that I ever was able to make a connection with somebody who I'd worked with prior to working in crypto, and then somebody that I met once I was in the space, like when I was finally able to make an introduction like that, and I was like, wait, I just like delivered a lot of value there that will never ever be reflected in, like, you know, in a revenue number, in, like, you know, whatever it may be. It's just like this connection, like whether they shared one idea, whether they talked about whatever it was like that for me was just like, you know, I had the ability to do that.
Right.
Like to bring these two people together that were equally passionate about the projects that they were working on and help each other continue to build and continue to iterate on what they thought was you know, a potentially successful project, company, whatever.
And then you see the result of bringing those two people together.
Of course.
And you're like, wow.
Yeah, and that just continues to kind of grow the space. And I mean, even you, like, I'm sure, like, you know, a big part of what you do with recruiting new people to go into the space, like, I mean, at the TIE, like, I'm currently hired. I interview people every week. I talk to people all the time. And it's people who want to work in crypto. And as somebody like, you know, like you, who wants to find people to bring into the space, like, you have this almost sense of responsibility where, like, you're building the space. Like, like these companies that are behind the scenes running everything that takes place in crypto, whether it's the market makers, the big trading firms, the exchanges, whatever it is that you work with, like, you have to make sure that the guys you're putting in front of them, that you're putting up for these jobs, are people that, like, you know, fit this ethos and that understand, like, that this isn't just like a job for us. This isn't just like a fun meme game. Like, this is genuinely like a disruption of a system that's existed for years that no one has ever challenged or questioned, which is, like, you know, the way that the US dollar is just, you know, it fully just is, you know, no one challenges that. Like, the US dollar is backed by the full, you know, faith in whatever of the US government. Like, we have decentralized currencies that are run by no one other than the market. Like, the market exists for these assets, and it's fully capitalistic. And if you want to exploit it, exploit it. Bitcoin might as well be what is it? $500 billion right now, given current market conditions. But, you know, a glass case in the middle of a street with $500 billion sitting in it. Break the case, and you get $500 billion if you can figure out how to do it. If you can't, like you can, like, and and you've had every opportunity to do that at this point, right? So I think that's really what I like. That's why I like really just love this space so much, is because you have the ability to continue building on these types of things.
Bro, it's crazy. And when you understand, like from my seat, like when you understand the impact that they're trying to make, or they think they can make, and then you couple that with you just raised $10 million from a VC, and I'm helping you hire your fourth employee, your fifth employee. Like, I'm well aware of the impact that makes, and like, if I do this placement right, I mean, this could be awesome,
100%. It's honestly, it's funny because you mentioned Laura a little earlier, but like, two things that we always like, or one of the things we always talk about is, we really just love being involved in the industry in general, and like learning about these companies and helping build them up again by making these connections, referring people around and whatever. But like, I feel like that, like, overall, it's just a reflection of how much like we're bought into what this all is. And like, same thing with you, right? It's like you could easily make money by placing people with companies, whatever it is, but like, there's definitely like a level of judgment that you have to like,
Oh my God.
go through to make sure that like, this is something that's actually going to be, like a positive for them, right? So yeah, I mean, it's for us, like, I think, we're all kind of on the same page with, we want to build something that we think is going to be amazing, and it's really a matter of bringing the right people into the equation to make it happen, because
And it's a rewarding feeling, like, once, like, given the passion that me and you have about being here, and that everyone in the space has about being here, it's a rewarding feeling to know that you did that for someone else. You helped them achieve that.
100%, and that's something that, again, you can't necessarily be compensated for it. At least in my case. I mean, you're a recruiter.
Well,
so.
but that's where you're wrong, brother. You can't be compensated.
Right,
for it.
but at the end of the day, it's really, I mean, it's really, again, about building an industry, and I think that's the most exciting thing about all of this is like, as late as it might feel in the game, now that, Bitcoin's been around over 10 years, like, crypto continues to develop, whatever, like, we're still so early. And there's still so much growth to be had, and like, there's going to be pitfalls along the way. There's going to be, systems that explode and whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, like, I think at this point, like, there's some like paradigm shift that's taking place with crypto that I think will, down the line, not saying it's going to be in 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be, will truly disrupt the financial system that, we grew up with, right? And it's going to be just like a complete shift from that. I'm very convinced of that at this point in time, just after seeing, I mean, for me, I always follow the smartest people that I know and the people that I respect, right? So it's like I remember back when I was working internships, like jobs, whatever it was like I'd always look around like who's the person that I respect? Who do I want to be in 5 to 10 years? And since I've come to crypto, I've met 27 of those people, and some of them are younger than me. It's like literally, like, it's actually crazy because like, these, like, a lot of these guys are really, really smart, and I really believe that some of the best brains in the world have dedicated themselves to, solving these complex issues that exist within this
I remember when I came to that party that I first met you at, and we're going to circle back because I want to ask you about these parties. But I remember, like, speaking of these really young people who are like insanely smart, I remember meeting the founder of Floating Point Group and being like, wow. Wow, this guy's a genius, but he's wearing socks and sandals, and like, this is his party. He's throwing this party, and it's just like, wow, and like these are the people that are in the space. It was an interesting one to meet.
First of all, John Purifoy is a legend, like absolute legend, as well as all the other FPG guys. We absolutely love you. But yeah, no, 100%. It's crazy because like one of the smartest guys I know, he runs venture for an exchange. He is probably 21, 22 years old. Like, technically doesn't even have a college degree, but the guy's a savage. And but yeah. But
listen, I want to ask you about. I want to get behind the scenes on these parties, right? So like, I mentioned that I've seen you at a bunch of these, and it's because you're hosting a lot of these. So you work for the Tie now. Did you have to ask Josh, like, hey, I think we should sponsor one of these events? Like,
absolutely not. Josh is very much on. He's on par with that. He's with it. The first event that we ever actually did was a Tie event in the city.
Okay.
Just us to celebrate the launch of SigDev, which was the product that I started selling. And we had a couple hundred people come out for that. That was probably last maybe August or last August or September. But we had a bunch of institutional people out there, and that was really when I was starting to get my footing and trying to figure out what was going on in the space. I mean, for us, it's always been like, as long as we can attract high quality people like to these events like that we want to talk to, it's worth it, and that's proven itself so many times over because navigating these events.
Let's slow that down for 1 second.
Yeah.
Tell the audience who might not understand the significance of these events.
Fair.
And like why do you throw these events exactly? What are you hoping to get out of it? And then tell me a story of what you've gotten out of it before.
Sure. So let's start with crypto conferences. There's a lot of conferences. There is conference season. Like it starts, everyone just goes on the road. Like, I mean, it was not even 2 months ago that there was, Avalanche Summit in Barcelona, where we were out in Barcelona and there were all the events out there. The next week in London, there was those Coinmetrics put on a digital asset summit.
Yep.
I went directly from Barcelona to London. I then flew back to New York for all of 3 days and then went to Miami for BTC. Navigating these conferences is like a minefield because especially if you're somebody going there to, really get value out of it, right? Because there's a lot of guys that show up there that are just like, fanboys of whatever,
right.
Layer 1 blockchain it is, or like trying to talk to some of these companies, whatever it is. Like, but if you're actually somebody who's going there like, hey, like I need to get something out of this, right? Like navigating it is not easy, and there's a lot of events that get thrown. There's a lot of networking events to attend, whatever. For me, it's like I've learned how to navigate that system and figure out, who puts on the quality events where there's going to be people there from companies that you want to talk to. So for me specifically, that's the institutional side. So for instance, I sell data to hedge funds, right? So I'm looking to talk to different players in the market that are actively trading, whether that's a hedge fund or a market maker or an OTC desk or whatever it is. Thank you, sir.
Cheers, brother. We're talking about parties, so we might as well.
But with all of that, I think for me, it's really been about making sure that I'm getting in front of the right people. And, you can attend these conferences, you can listen to the talks, but at the end of the day, if you really want to connect with people, you go to these events where there are all of these institutional guys who, this guy runs a desk, this guy's a research analyst, this guy's CIO, like whatever it is, like, it's really like you want to talk to everyone and just get a sense again of what's going on in the market. Like it's like, to give you an example, like going to the Avalanche Summit, right? Like, what are people talking about at Avalanche? Like, what are some of the big things that are going on? Mm-hmm. The first thing that I learned at the Avalanche Summit was that their native token, that's the ticker is AVAX. Everyone that I know has pronounced it AVAX. It's actually a Vox. That was the first thing that I learned.
But then because you're talking to Europeans, bro.
Fair enough. But then going forward from there, really it's about trying to hone in on, what are people building, what are people looking to do with whatever. We know if for instance, with the Avalanche conference, like that's very focused on Avalanche specifically.
But that's funny that you just said that with that Vox thing, like, because like in a way, like that does make a difference, because if you have a conversation, you have 2 or 3 conversations, right, around, and you learn 5 to 6 small, tiny pieces of information like that. Like, you're not registering all of these tiny pieces of information, but it all comes into play when you talk to the next guy, right?
100. I mean, fair enough. Yeah. But yeah, with all of that, like for me, again, it really just comes down to who can I connect with, who can I, potentially partner with in different ways, and everything from you could become a potential client of mine to let me introduce you to someone who's looking for work. Let me introduce you to a VC that's ready to allocate. Let me introduce you on the other side of that equation to somebody that's looking to raise.
Sure.
And all of those different things come into play. And the more people you talk to and the more, issues that you identify, the sooner you realize that you can actually help solve some of these things. And
so basically, we go to conferences for information and networking. Those
100%.
Are the 2 things.
But that's really we live right now in a world where everyone, from across the world can sit at their computer and go on Twitter, go on Discord, whatever it is, it will always be different to connect with people in person, to shake hands, to really just genuinely, connect with people and understand, where are you at with this project? Like, what are you looking to do? And
I think it's also like a sign of commitment. Like you
Sure.
show that you're,
That's fair.
you know
Yeah,
what I'm
that's
saying?
fair.
Like
For
I'm
sure.
going out of my way to be here because I want,
sure.
because I need to.
I don't look at it that way because I, for one, I love the conference tour.
Yeah.
But
But subconsciously you
Yeah.
know the people are, but like that's the thing, you know the people are there, feel that way too. It's not a job for me to be here.
For
I
sure.
want
it's
to
not
be here.
it's not a job.
You know what I mean? It's not a job at all.
That's I when people ask me like, you know, like what like gets you out of bed, like what gets you to do this, whatever, it's like I genuinely like look at what I do every single day as a mission. Like, you know, we're growing an industry, we're growing companies, like and you see like the beautiful thing about it is you see your impact, like whether it's an introduction, whether it's a sale, whether it's, you know, whatever it may be, like, you know, you see the impact across across markets.
Okay, so
It's
you
nuts,
so you
you know?
you started with the first Thai party in New York, just like a local, like, you know, meet the Thai kind of gathering. And eventually, when I met you, you threw a party in Miami, and then I've seen you did one in Barcelona, which was popping. That was a great time. And then I think there was a third one that in Bitcoin Week. That was a great party too. So, like, what have you gotten out of these parties?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, primarily that's from the business side, right? So I'm definitely trying to connect with hedge funds and trading firms at those at those events. You know, but for me, it's also like understanding what these trading companies do. Like again, like it's not just like, hey, let me meet somebody and show them a product and
Right.
whatever. Like
It's not a transaction.
It's about
There's no-
understanding what you do and do I fit into the equation in such a way that it either helps you save time as a hedge fund manager. If I can save you 30 minutes a day, that's easily worth thousands of dollars. Like easily. Like your time is very valuable. If I can find you alpha, even better. If I can help you mitigate risk, even better. Whatever that is, like let me help you. Let me try and figure out a way to help you do that. If that's not the case with somebody that I'm talking to, and that is then outside of the scope of my product or my company, then let's just genuinely connect because, you know, given that I have these conversations all the time, you likely are doing the same thing just by, you know, nature of being in crypto. You know, like there's almost certainly some kind of, whether it's again an introduction or, you know, even just like showing off like a DeFi protocol or like some sort of open source software that you found in the past, like, you know, those things for me, like, I mean, I've shilled Hummingbot to so many people. Hummingbot is like a market making software. When I was originally learning how to, like when I was originally trying to break into crypto, I was like, I want to understand market making. What better way to understand market making than to, as a retail trader, market make, which is something you can't do in traditional finance. I thought it was so cool you could do it in crypto, layer orders onto an order book and watch them get filled and whatever else. But I've showed that to so many people since I've started, like in crypto. People are always like, oh yeah, like I'm trying to understand market making, or oh hey, like I need like you know, like a software to build on top of for my market making strategies. Like I'll show that all the time, and it's like something as simple as that. Like if you come away with that, and then like you build on top of that, and that then helps your business, like that alone is worth the cost of flying to a conference and staying there and you know having a few drinks. Like that's absolutely worth the cost. So
well, I'm sure the fact that every time someone like me goes to a conference and is looking for the Thai event, that's got to be powerful for the brand. I'm sure, like, you know, it's engaged people with the brand of the Thai.
Absolutely,
100%.
Brand is very important in crypto.
It is.
I mean, it comes
because there's so many people trying to get in. There's so many people trying to create a brand that, like, if you've proven and established yourself and you've earned it, because what comes with a good brand is trust. And that's
Absolutely.
what's really important. And when people trust you, you're good.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, and we make an effort, and like, you know, for us at the Thai, like to make sure that when we throw an event, we have like the who's who of institutional crypto like there.
Yeah. So tell me about the behind. So tell me what's in your head. So for the listeners, you're the one who plans the event. You're there executing, and you're there making sure everything goes smoothly. So tell me about what's going through your head as you plan it, and then like as you're super stressed out during the night, like what are the problems that you have to deal with as the night goes on and all that?
It varies from event to event, right? So like I've thrown a couple myself where like I've kind of been part of the, you know, whether it's the, you know, call it the party planning committee or whatever you want to call it, right? So like for instance, when we did the event at the W in Barcelona, like that was us, that was Dexterity Capital, Arpon. Arpon is one of the he works with Dexterity, and he that wasn't even his first event that he had thrown at the W. He's like, this event's nothing compared to the last event that I threw at the W. Right?
I'll get there one
so,
day.
Yeah,
we'll
exactly.
be there one day.
But it was me, it was him, it was Laura from Ledger Prime. Like it was like a couple other people as well were involved. But like, you know, that for us, I mean, it was 3 weeks out. We're having like meetings like, you know, a couple times a week, like trying to nail down like, okay, are we getting these people to come out? Like who are we inviting? How are we divvying up like this or that, whatever. It really, at the end of the day, like it's not that hard to put on these events once you have the network, because people understand that, you know, when I reach out to somebody and say like, hey, like we're having an event, like they understand that they're going to come and they're going to meet some people that they want to be interacting with. That's just by nature of, I mean, number one, my clients, right? Like I mean, I have over 35 clients right now that are all, you know, institutions in this space that are, you know, very established and have people that you would like to connect with and speak with. You know, but it really, again, depends on your objectives. So for me, it's really just making sure that I get a large number of high quality people into a room so that they can have the discussions that they need to have, make the connections they need to have, swap telegrams, whatever it is, so that they can then follow up on that and make sure that, you know, down the line, they're aligned and that they're building something crazy.
All right. Well, let's get off parties then. If you want to know more, come. It's a great time. I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you. And for real, the ties parties are always lit. Another thing I wanted to ask you about that, like, I need you to educate me here. I really don't know much about this. So we talked about this before. Like, I've done a great job on LinkedIn. Like, that's where I've kind of cultivated my brand, really, and therefore I've gotten a decent following there. And it's a platform that I know and understand well from my background in recruiting, right? Platform that I have never paid any attention to in my past is Twitter. It's you know, it's just not native to me at all. I've never spent time on it, and when I tried to kind of take my LinkedIn content and put it on Twitter, it was not hitting, and I could tell that right away. So I started to explore more, and I was like, okay, this is not the vibe, you know? Yeah. And it's basically like going into a different club, and like you can't wear the same outfit. You know what I'm saying?
That's a good
so
way to put it.
Right?
That's a good way to put it.
So now I'm realizing the alpha on Twitter, right? And that I need to pay a lot more attention there. And I've started to like join the conversation, which I think is really important to just put that out there, that the more you want to go deeper and get involved, you need to be involved in the conversation. And if you're not involved on all platforms and all conversations, you know, there's alpha that you're missing. Mm-hmm. So as I'm digging deep into Twitter, I'm seeing, like we brought up Laura, like the one thing I noticed was she did this little joke meme on Twitter where it was her and Josh Lim from Genesis. It was like their two faces, and she was just like messing around, like making it bigger and like saying every couple likes I'll make.
I did all the editing on that tweet, just so that you know.
You don't get the credit you deserve.
No, she did. She gave me credit multiple times, but I'm not gonna lie, I was the one on Procreate on my iPad, like dragging Josh's face a little bigger with every 10 likes.
So this is called memeing. I guess. So this is called memeing. You're memeing, right?
We have fun on Twitter. Yes, we like.
So tell me how having fun on Twitter and like playing games like that is actually a growth marketing tool, like that is actually effective.
So what I love, again, another thing that I absolutely love about the crypto space is that, like, with these different projects that come out and with these different companies, like, there are communities behind them. So, like, there are people that believe in their mission, they see what they're doing, they believe in it, and they want to be involved in some respect, right? So, you know, like, one, like, again, not to bring up Maple Finance again as much as we love Maple Finance, but, like, Laura was very big, like, working with Maple Finance, like, doing a lot of different content with them and different things like that, and I just naturally, like, with Laura's help, found my way into working with them a little bit as well on Twitter. But really, like, you know, with these communities, like, you have to engage people outside of just, like, your client base. Like, developing this brand is really, it's a great thing because you get more people just looped into what's going on and what you're doing, and it adds a visibility just into, like, you know, who you are as a company.
So memeing Maple. So when you say I was memeing Maple, what you're actually doing is supporting Maple by giving them visibility to your community, and also you're infiltrating their community because now you're attached to this post. Is that it?
I mean, I believe in what they're doing. right? So I've looked at the work that Maple does, and I think that what they're doing is fantastic, right? So
I'm not saying you don't. Of course, you believe in the mission.
Right, right, no,
That's part of it.
of course, yeah. So I believe in the mission, but because of that, right, like I want to get involved in a certain way that
Sure.
I can. So the way that I've been able to do that is through Twitter and like making memes and just having fun. But there's a whole community of people that believe in this project as well, that are in Telegram groups and Discord channels and like all these different things that, you know, like and you know, getting them involved and like, you know, getting like, for instance, I've become somewhat of like an intern for Maple Finance, where I'm posting memes and like doing all these different things, and that for me has been like a lot of fun because I've been able to connect with the community, get a sense of, you know, what things that they think are good. Like, you know, I'm serving the community as an intern, right? So like these guys who have been with the project for a while that they don't even work at Maple. They're just what Maple refers to as the Mapes. They're the OG guys that have been bought in since day one. I have to seek their approval. Like I want like these Mapes might as well be like, you know, the like these oracles that I need to consult before I do anything. But they're you know, but really it's been a lot of fun trying to engage this community and really trying to you know, continue building up a brand along with this incredible product that they also have. And I think that's going to be a big part. I mean, one of the things that you see in crypto a lot, like especially as of late, is like this focus on swag. People love swag in crypto. Like people like building a brand. Like I mean, like we have sweatshirts. Like Maple has sweatshirts and hats. Like Ledger Prime did bathrobes at one point. But like all of it's like
Love
branded. But it's genuinely like I. Not
because you mess with the company, you want to
you believe in what they're doing and what they're building, and it's like it's almost to say that it's more equitable to a certain point where, like, you know, if like are you gonna like if you bank with Wells Fargo, are you rocking Wells Fargo swag when you walk around? Like, no. But hey, if I like Maple, if I think Maple's cool, like if I buy Maple and stake it and whatever,
you
and
like, I'm running,
like I want to rep that. You know, it's like I like that for me is like that's been a big draw, and I know some people that are figuring this out, and you can build insane brands around these companies because the nature of the communities that understand what they're doing and that are bought in are so, like, you know, like I won't want to say cult like, but to a point like that. Where like, hey, like I'll
community.
Yeah, like
community.
I want you to ask what this means on my shirt or like on my hat. Like it genuinely is like you're building a brand, and like I think at the end of the day, like that does make it more equitable because you want to be if you believe in something, you should be aligned with it. And like I think that, you know, for myself, like I mean, I have Maple swag all over my desk. Like you know, people are always asking me and telling me like this and that, whatever. Like I genuinely, like, you know, it's a project that I think is awesome, and I would love to be associated with it, even to the smallest degree, like just because I think what they're doing is awesome.
And you know, the perspective from what I'm asking this is basically like, because I'm starting to do placements of like chief marketing officers and growth hacking kind of guys and community managers. So you know, when I ask them about their marketing strategies, I want to understand like what is a Twitter marketing strategy. But I think you made it pretty clear, like the point of a Twitter marketing strategy is to basically infiltrate other communities, and you know, it's not, and I guess infiltrate is like very aggressive, and you know, in your case you're not infiltrating, but
not even that. I'm not the guy to ask. I have 300 followers on Twitter, and my Twitter is more like a Facebook than it is like a Twitter, because everyone that follows me on Twitter are like just institutional guys that I like know and like mess with, right? So it's like for me, it's like I, you know, I think being genuine, sticking to your brand, and just continuing to try and build something that you think that you believe in and that all of the people behind you believe in is really just a beautiful thing. And like, you know, at the end of the day, like what I imagine, like even just the values that exist in crypto, and like when looking at the values that exist in crypto versus the values that exist in traditional finance, like values in crypto are so much more like just wide open. Like, get involved. We want people to shill us. We want people to be excited about us, and we want to reward the people that are our biggest cheerleaders, you know, with whatever it is. Like, you know, we'll retweet you on Twitter. We'll send you some swag. We'll whatever this. It's really like, I think that's the way that things should be. Like, imagine working for a company that you can actually be like happy to rep and like actually be like, I'm proud to work for these guys. I think what they're doing is sick.
That's how I feel with Framework. I mean, they don't honestly, like Framework, you know, they pay me and I manage a hiring program for their portfolio. But when I see, you know, articles like they just launched a new fund based fully in gaming, I'm like, this is exciting. I'm proud to support this, you know?
100%.
And yeah, you don't have to ask me. Maybe I don't do the memeing on Twitter. Maybe I should, but
But some people will even ask you, right? They'll be like, "Oh, hey,
no,
I've seen
you're
you
right.
working with Framework. Like, what is this? What is
Yeah.
this?" Like, and they'll ask you, and then you can
And I'm excited, and you feel the passion come
100%.
out just like this. So
Yeah, and that's what's great about it, man. It's like, and I overall like the ethos of crypto is just more equitable for everyone involved, and and I think that that's like as we see more of a shift in that direction, like people are going to be proud of the companies that they work for, the companies that they trade with, the protocols that they invest in, like whatever it is, like. I think that that's a beautiful thing, and I think that that should absolutely be the case because, like, why do you want to just like, I don't know. Overall, for me, it's like I'd rather be excited about what I'm doing every day than just do something for a paycheck, and that's, I mean, for me, I think that's really one of the more exciting things about it.
and that connects to your personal brand. I mean, I think that's evident. I think that's what people take away when they meet you. You know. Cool, man. So before we wrap up, I want you to tell me a little bit about what you're seeing out there in your job. You know, you're doing institutional sales. Like, what are you seeing from the institutions? What are the trends out there?
Yeah, it always varies, right? Because it can. I mean, there's two different ways to look at it, and I would say there's one aspect that I'm more well versed in than the other. So there's current market conditions, right? So the example of UST collapsing over the past couple of days, and the way that that's kind of impacted the rest of not some people are even claiming not just crypto markets. I saw an article that claimed that the collapse of Terra was actually impacting equity markets, which I thought was hysterical. I'm not as well versed in that. What I'm well versed in are industry trends and getting to understand what companies are doing and how they're doing it and how that fits into this overall equation of what does the crypto industry look like, right? So as far as trends there, like, I mean, it's just continued institutionalization. Bigger and bigger institutions continue to move into this space and at least express interest in it, right? So we see all the time there's news of banks that are doing all of these crazy, that are trying to, Goldman Sachs being able to, set up, I believe they're involved now in the options market in crypto and with Bitcoin, right? So like even different things like that are huge when you consider that 3 years ago, the idea of a Bitcoin ETF sounded like preposterous. And now today it's like it's a reality, right? It's like something that, it actively exists, right? So it's like I think for me it's really about trying to identify what's next and like where things are moving. And as the space gets more institutionalized, like one example, right, is like prime brokerage.
Mm-hmm.
Like what does prime brokerage look like in crypto, when you think about how it looks in traditional finance, right? So, in crypto, if you really want to set up like you have a number of companies out there that currently exist, Genesis, Falcon X, Hidden Road, like Coinbase Prime, like these guys all have great offerings, right? But it's really hard to hone in on what does a real PB look like in crypto, because you need to have a number of different things. You need to have a deep balance sheet to be able to lend out to different people. You need to have a custodial solution. Like you need to be able to connect to all these different like liquidity venues and like all these different things. So for me, it's like, what I'm trying to figure out right now are what do these trends look like for these different players? Like, hedge funds have established themselves. Hedge funds can do everything from just a long short strategy, fundamental strategy, just investing, to, hey, I want to market make, hey, I want to do VC. Like these guys do everything. Like, but then you have a market maker. Like how does market making, for a token where you're specifically working with a token to be able to help them launch and all these different things, versus just general liquidity provision at a liquidity venue. How do those two things differ, and what strategy might make the most sense longer term, especially considering like regulations and things like that. But then prime brokerage is another thing that I've started to pay a lot of attention to, because there are going to be very large institutions that continue to enter this space, and there are big issues that exist with liquidity and being able to actually like interact with these assets when you have hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. Like crypto's still not that big. I mean, last time I checked, like with the recent crash, I think we're like a trillion and a half total market cap of all assets that exist in crypto, which is tiny compared to everything else. Like we're still so early, which is insane. So really for me, it's just a matter of staying on top of what's going to continue developing as new players move into the market. But I mean, with the nature of kind of how capitalism works, I envision these holes being filled very quickly because, just by having these conversations, you can pretty quickly figure out what the shortcomings are of the, current solutions that do exist. And it's just a matter of building it and executing on it. And I think there's a lot, there's going to be a number of players that try to come in and do these different things, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it all shakes out because it's really about gauging what these different players need and being able to fulfill those needs. So yeah, at the end of the day, just keeping your ear to the street and continuing to talk to people and network with people and understand what their pain points are is really where I try to exist, is right there in that space where I can understand those things, and then hopefully if I can't solve them myself, then loop somebody in who I think can, and go from there.
It's that simple, bro. We'll be here for the long run. Cheers, man.
I hope so.
This was awesome. See you down in Permissionless.
Sounds great, sir.
Salute.
Appreciate it.